Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Leighton Cassette Podcast. And today I'll be reviewing Varsity Blues, the high school football drama / comedy film from director Brian Robbins and MTV Films, before MTV sucked. Written by W. Peter Liff. James Vanderbeek stars as John Moxon, or Mox, a backup quarterback who has a successful academic career. Chris Klein was actually up for the role, but Robbins was persuaded to go with Vanderbeek by Ron Lester. Ron Lester plays guard Billy Bob. Vanderbeek chose to wear number 4 in the film as an homage to Brett Favre. Vanderbeek actually only began acting after a high school football injury ended his football career. Now, Lester got his role because of his work in the Nickelodeon film Good Burger, which was also directed by Robbins. Paul Walker, in his best role, in my opinion, plays starting quarterback Lance Harbor. Amy Smart plays Jules Harbor, Mox's girlfriend and Lance's younger sister, and Allie Lartner plays head cheerleader and Lance's girlfriend, Darcy Sears. Elel Swinton plays Wendell Brown, the team's running back and one of the only African Americans on the team. He actually played college football at Stanford and was on the practice squad for the Kansas City Chiefs before injuries ended his football career. Legendary actor and father of Angelina Jolie, John Voight, plays the team's head coach, Bud Kilmer. Scott Caan plays Tweeter, the team's sex-crazed, hard-partying wide receiver. Richard Lineback plays Lance and Jules' father, Joe. And Thomas Duffy plays Mox's father, Sam. Joe Pitchler plays Kyle Moxon, the younger brother of John, who is obsessed with religion. Unfortunately, Pitchler has been missing since January 2006. He was last seen January 5th, 2006, playing cards with friends, and his car was found off the freeway a few days later. One of the first things people usually mention about this movie is that Paramount, who distributed it, was sued by the University of Toronto for trademark infringement. The University of Toronto has the term Varsity Blues trademarked for their athletic teams. They said the movie portrayed a poor stereotype of collegiate sports, even though it's about high school football. Now, they did reach an out-of-court settlement. They had Paramount pay the university an undisclosed sum and provide funding for 8 scholarships, and they put a disclaimer at the beginning of the movie stating that the university has no association whatsoever with the film. Varsity Blues was released January 15, 1999, with a budget of $16 million. It won its first 2 weeks at the box office with $15 million and $10 million, respectively. It ended up pulling in $54 million during its theatrical run. Opening credits, and some shots with narration from Mox about how football is a way of life in West Canyon, Texas. Now, I've heard people in the film call it Canyon, West Can, Texas, so if you hear me sort of slide back and forth between the two, that's because it sounded like different characters call it different things, and it just stuck out in my mind. And we see younger versions of Mox and his best friend, Lance, Billy Bob, and Tweeter playing Pee Wee football. And we pan out to current-day Mox looking at a picture of him and his friends as kids. You just see him from the back. It looks like they're going out for the coin toss. He is shaken out of his daydream by his little brother, who asks him if he thinks he'll play. Mox says that he never plays, and Lance is the best quarterback in the state. Lance's little brother has a cross tied to himself like he is crucified. Down at breakfast, we learn that Mox's dad is obsessed with football and berates his brother, saying how can your brother focus when you got this whole deal tied to you, strapped to you. But lucky for us, we don't have to spend much time with this prick, as Mox's friend Billy Bob comes to pick him up. Billy Bob takes off, making Mox chase him, and Mox eventually does hop in Billy Bob's truck and chases Billy Bob's pet pig, Bacon, pun humor, to the bed of the truck. Bacon fucks with Wendell while Billy Bob dips bread in peanut butter and drinks maple syrup like it's a bottle of water, proudly stating, "I love that dog. A stupid fat guy. How original." Next, they pick up Lance, and Billy Bob is quite different when picking him up. Billy Bob gets out and grabs his bag for him and basically kisses his ass. Lance has a big billboard in his front yard with his picture on it. They pick up Tweeter, who, after some comments about how he needs to get laid, tells Billy Bob he's about to fuck his pig. I thought that Tweeter's introduction into the film was pretty humorous. West Canyon has their pep rallies in the morning, which is quite different than my high school, which held theirs in the afternoon. Coach Kilmer lists his credentials at the pep rally, so we know he's a serious coach. He's been there forever. He's old as fuck. He introduces Lance, and Lance starts his speech off saying, "I was laying in bed last night, and every pussy in the gym gets soaking wet," as the girls let out a huge cheer. He had a dream they were beating Bangville 14-3, but was sad when he woke up, but then he realized they were going to beat them by way more than that. Outside the gym, Mox is wearing his 90s baggy-ass pants as him and Jules count down the weeks left in the season. Mox is our reluctant hero. We see the town is shut down for Friday Night Football, and we see the team prepping in the locker room. Tweeter shows Mox his new end zone dance, which is the Icky Shuffle that Cincinnati Bengals running back Icky Woods used to do in the early 90s. We see Kilmer and a doctor shooting up Lance's knee with a steroid. Mox sits on the sidelines reading a book hidden inside his playbook while the Coyotes are winning 28-17. They score again, but Billy Bob is hurt on the play, and he obviously has a concussion. He can't tell how many fingers the trainer is holding up, but Mox says it's got to be true or false. Billy Bob says true, and they celebrate, thinking he's okay, I guess. I mean, Mox is supposed to be a smart kid. He fucking knows better than that, you'd think, but they should have just had someone other than Mox say that line, and it would have been fine. Kilmer grabs Mox after the game and takes the book out of his playbook and tells Mox he would cut his ass if his dad hadn't played his heart out for him. Lance scores what I guess is some painkillers from Tweeter for his knee. At the after party, we see some craziness. Tweeter has Billy Bob record him hitting some asshole who graduated in 1980 but still comes to all the high school parties in the nuts with a wiffle ball bat. Lance starts to fuck Darcy on a dryer. Mox, Jules, and Billy Bob play quarters. Billy Bob goes to puke and he runs into the room where Lance and Darcy are fucking and he pukes in the washer beside him. Pretty humorous spot there. We cut to practice that week, and Mox leads the second string onto the field while the kids' parents watch, talking about how much fun their kids are having. They obviously don't know anything about what their kids are experiencing, but they played for Kilmer, so they should. Though it seems that everyone is generally having a good time besides Mox. Then Mox tries to demonstrate a new offense to Kilmer, who grabs his face mask and pulls him around, berating him. Yeah, this would definitely not fly in today's day and age. Lance and Mox's fathers talk about their 8th graders who they plan on having play next fall at a cookout. Shortly after this, the dads have their sons throw them the ball while they brag about whose boy is better. Lance knocks a beer can off his dad's head, and when it's Mox's turn, he kind of internalizes everything they are saying to him, and he's not happy about this, and he starts to get pissed, and he turns around, and he launches the ball and drills it right in his dad's fucking face. It's pretty funny. Brutal, but funny. In sex ed the next day, the teacher has them say penis, 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 vagina, 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 to make them comfortable saying it, I guess. They will be studying the male erection today. She wants them to name and discard slang terms for the penis. Some kid says boner. She then calls on Mox, who names a ton of them. Fucking purple-headed yogurt slinger, Mr. Mushroom, shit like that. And then he ends it with Pedro, different. And after this little banter, Billy Bob comes back from the bathroom, and when he goes back to his desk, he falls down and passes out. Kilmer tells Billy Bob he will play every minute of the game, despite the nurse thinking it's not a good idea. Coach Kilmer is a walking fucking lawsuit. Billy Bob is taking oxygen on the sideline when Kilmer sends him in for one more series, despite it seeming like he's going to fall over and die any second. They break the huddle and walk up to the line of scrimmage, and Billy Bob passes out and falls over, creating a hole in the line where two defenders shoot the gap and take Lance's ass down. And it's obvious that Lance is hurt bad. Mox comes in with the Coyotes down 21-17. There's about a minute left in the game. Kilmer tries to give him a pep talk. Mox launches a completion to Tweeter. Mox snaps the ball and throws it out of bounds at the opposing team's mascot to stop the clock. Something his dad thinks is hilarious until he remembers his son doing the same thing to him. I guess he kind of thinks, oh, maybe it wasn't such an accident he hit me right in the fucking face. Mox can't determine what play they are calling from the sideline, so him and Wendell improvise and run a trick play to score the winning touchdown. At the hospital, the doctor informs everyone who's there, which is Lance's parents, Kilmer, Mox, and Darcy, that Lance will be out a year and a half, if he can ever play again. His dad is distraught because he is scared he will lose his scholarship to Florida State. The doctor said he is surprised he hasn't had problems before due to scar tissue in his knee, and he looks at Kilmer. The doctor says Lance should not have even been playing. Of course, Kilmer says Lance never said a word to him. Kilmer tells Mox to go home, because Mox knows things. Darcy follows him, and she changes in the car while Mox drives her to the after party. She's already trying to get in Mox's pants at this point. Darcy goes into the party, and Mox takes off. The cops show up and bust Tweeter's balls. They say they are there just to make sure no one drinks and drives. They tell Tweeter to go home, and he says he will. Then he steals their car. Mox goes to buy a Coke at the convenience store, but the cashier gives him a six-pack instead. Mox drinks it outside when Tweeter shows up in the car, naked with some girls from school. Tweeter wants them to go with him, but Mox, of course, he's a good guy, so he refuses, so Tweeter and the girls take off again. Sirens blaring. Mox then goes and sees Jules, and he feels conflicted about the whole thing. One of the cops is complaining about Tweeter stealing his car the next morning. Kilmer overhears him and asks, sort of passively, intimidatingly, whatever, I'd say more passively, if his players are too much for him. The cop backs off immediately. The team easily wins their next game, 66-3. Mox is interviewed by a radio station, and it seems Mox is enjoying the newfound attention a little bit, which annoys Jules. Mox's father puts up his giant-ass billboard. It's amazing. At the beginning of the movie, there's only 4 games left. So there's 2 games left, I believe, at this point, but Mox still gets his billboard. At practice, Mox tries to install a hook and ladder trick play, but Billy Bob drops the ball. Kilmer again yells at Mox. After practice, Kilmer pulls Billy Bob into his office and berates him for fucking up his universe. He said Billy Bob is the reason Lance is hurt, and when Billy Bob tries to talk about his, say his head's bothering him, Kilmer says, I don't want to hear excuses, just fix it. Real nice fucking guy, this Kilmer is. Kilmer is definitely the type of person who accepts no responsibility for anything that has ever happened in his life. The next day, Darcy invites Mox over for the night, and says her parents will be gone until after midnight. He thinks out loud about it and then decides to have his little brother buy him condoms for the evening's festivities. He's having this external monologue in the convenience store. He shows up at Darcy's and she invites him in, and then she goes to make ice cream sundaes. She comes out totally naked with whipped cream covering her tits and vagina. In reality, it was shaving cream, as I don't think they could get the whipped cream to it melted or whatever, so they had to use shaving cream instead. They kiss, and Mox breaks it off and says it isn't right. She gets upset and saying she doesn't love Lance after Mox brings him up, and says that she just wants to get out of town and she wants a better life. She was going to go with Lance to Florida State. He comforts her and they share a laugh after he says he usually falls for the whipped cream bikini every time. At school the next day, Wendell tells Mox that Kilmer is blaming Billy Bob for Lance's leg. Wendell snaps when Mox says he's over football too. Wendell says he's over this shit and Mox says, I hear you, man. And Wendell says that Kilmer is racist and just uses him as his black workhorse, but never lets him get any glory of scoring touchdowns. Kilmer definitely seems to be that type of person. Kilmer definitely hates and uses all his players, but Wendell does bring up that his knee, and Kilmer plays it off much like he did with Billy Bob's head. Wendell says his mom has been doing his recruiting for college, and Mox promises to get Wendell in the end zone. And Wendell says he only has 3 touchdowns because he broke for over 20 yards every time. Every time they get close to the end zone, that's when Kilmer lets someone else score. And we do see evidence of that. And yeah, I would say Kilmer probably is a racist, and just an asshole in general as well. That Mox promises to get Wendell in the end zone, and they end with a handshake. Wendell says that they are cool. Darcy thanks Mox and kisses him. Jules sees this and is pissed. At practice, Tweeter refers to bitches as panty droppers and basically talks about committing date rape in a very pre-#MeToo type of way. This dialogue would definitely not be allowed anywhere near a movie today. Mox realizes it's fucked up and asks him if he thinks he will enjoy prison. Tweeter looks down at his pants this all happens while they are at practice and asks out loud, "The fuck is that?" My personal guess would probably be herpes. Mox goes to the top-notch restaurant and tries to make up with Jules. She refuses and says over the loudspeaker that Mox is at her window and he gets bombarded by fans. He leaves to avoid all the attention as the fans swarm his car. We see Mox, Billy Bob, Tweeter, Wendell, and Lance at a strip club. One of the servers says drinks are on the house all night. Wendell has reservations about drinking as they have a game the next day, but they say fuck it and start to drink anyway. Billy Bob starts stripping and gets on stage and does a dance with one of the strippers. As Lance thanks Mox for coming to visit him in the hospital, as he was the only one of his teammates to do so. Next up, we hear Van Halen's Hot for Teacher, and we see a familiar-looking face on stage, and the boys see that it's their sex ed teacher, Miss Davis. She looks horrified initially, but then warms up to it as she sees their excited reactions. Tweeter hits on her while she sits with them after, and so does Billy Bob as they toast to her. They exit the strip club the next morning, looking terrible. And at that night's game, they play like shit. They bitch about being hungover in the huddle as Thunderstruck starts playing. We see some slow-mo montages of them getting their ass whipped. They lose 20-3. In the locker room, Kilmer loses his fucking mind, screaming at Mox, knocking water coolers over. When Kilmer sees Billy Bob crying, he screams at him, blaming him for Lance's leg, and he kicks Billy Bob out of the locker room. Back at home, Mox's dad jumps on his shit about the game. Mox then delivers the most famous and quoted line from the film. Playing football at West Cain, Texas might have been the opportunity of your life, but I don't want your life. Kyle brings in bacon because Billy Bob dropped him off and said he can't take care of him. Mox then goes and finds Billy Bob at the practice field. Billy Bob is shooting his football trophies and regretting his playing football. Now, this is sort of the emotional crescendo of the movie, and in real life, Ron Lester, who plays Billy Bob, was a big fan of Frank Sinatra. And the day they shot the scene, Frank Sinatra died. So, he kind of used his feelings about that to summon up the emotion he needed for this scene. Mox is able to calm Billy Bob down, and Billy Bob hands Mox a shotgun. Mox sees a flyer with Kilmer's face on it and shoots it out. Basically, Billy Bob says that, they got yelled at ever since they were little kids and nothing was ever good enough, and it's a pretty good scene. It's pretty powerful. Definitely a good emotional scene. Now, the next morning, John opens his letter of acceptance from Brown. His mother is happy, but his father just wants to talk about that week's opponent, Gilroy. Now, right before Mox opens his letter, we see a couple of guys talking to Mox's dad on his front porch, and apparently Gilroy used to be like a 4A team, and they dropped down to 3A, and they've just been destroying people since. So it's like the big, you know, how can the Coyotes overcome this type of thing? They're the underdog. They're definitely the underdog. Now, Mox gets rightly pissed because all his dad wants to do is talk about Gilroy. And at school, Billy Bob is happy as shit as he got his CAT scanned and it's okay. Basically, he got a CAT scan and everything with his brain's alright and he can play that night's game, or that week's game. Billy Bob then asks Miss Davis to prom. After practice, Kilmer threatens that if John doesn't follow the game plan, that he will fuck with his transcripts and screw him out of his Brown scholarship. John goes and sees Jules and tells her about Brown and his predicament with Kilmer. She tells him to quit whining and be a hero. Good advice, Jules. The next day, we see the team reciting the Lord's Prayer as they prepare for the game. Kilmer gives a speech about how this is the most important game of their lives. I think he says 48 minutes for the next 48 years of your life. The game starts and Wendell carries the Coyotes downfield. And true to what Wendell told Mox earlier, as soon as they get inside the 10-yard line, Kilmer calls a play to a different player. But Mox says fuck that and gives Wendell the ball anyway. And Wendell gets the touchdown. Kilmer isn't happy, but he'll take it. The next series, Wendell gets hurt. The trainer tells Kilmer that Wendell tore something. Kilmer asks the trainer if he can fix it, and he says if Wendell will let them. Gilroy scores another touchdown, and the Coyotes go into halftime down 14-7. Mox opens the trainer's door at halftime just as they are about to shoot up Wendell's leg. Mox and Tweeter say this is wrong. Mox says he'll quit, and Kilmer says finally, and he tells Tweeter to be the quarterback, and Tweeter says he quits too, and Lance busts in and tells Wendell it isn't worth it. And because he did it and he is worse off for it. Kilmer calls Lance a gimp who is praying for them to lose. And Billy Bob swears on his mother's grave that if that needle goes in Wendell's leg, he will rip off Kilmer's arms and beat him to death with them. They all quit. Billy Bob as well, and they say that the only way they are going back out on that field is without Kilmer. Kilmer snaps and jumps Mox and chokes him, but he is pulled off by the rest of the team. Kilmer tries to get them to go back to the field with him, but they stay put. Kilmer then walks off. Gave up pretty easily. Mox gives a speech to the team and says to play the next 24 minutes for the next 24 minutes, and not the rest of their lives. The team rallies behind Mox and they return to the field. However, Gilroy scores again, and the Coyotes are down 17-7. Lance takes over as coach and runs the offense that Mox tried to show Kilmer earlier, and decides to call all the plays from the line of scrimmage so that the defense won't have time to get set or to get the proper personnel on the field. After a nice drive, Mox throws a touchdown to Tweeter. The broadcasters calling the game wonder where Kilmer is, and we see him in his office looking at all his trophies, and it looks like he is packing up shop. Good riddance. Get the fuck out. Down 3 with less than a minute in the fourth quarter, Billy Bob goes in to play defense, and the Coyotes block the punt thanks to the hole Billy Bob creates. Mox throws a pass to Tweeter, who fails to get out of bounds to stop the clock. So Mox throws an incompletion and nails the mascot again. Lance calls the hook and ladder, which is the trick play where Billy Bob ends up with the ball. They do this, and in slow motion, Billy Bob catches the ball and the Coyotes score to win the game. Mox and Jules finally make up. Mox narrates the end and tells us that he never played football again, which is odd because this is a game to get into the playoffs. He also says Kilmer never coached again, and there's a big statue of Kilmer outside the stadium, and it was too heavy to move, so it still stands. He says Billy Bob cries because he's a bit of a crier, Tweeter drank beer because Tweeter drinks beer, and that Lance found his calling as a football coach. And positives, in the credits roll. Positives, good young cast, good story, great villain in Coach Kilmer. This movie can really transport you to where you were mentally in your high school days, no matter when you graduated. Billy Bob steals the show, but I'd say all the cast does a good job, particularly Billy Bob and Tweeter. Negatives, it can drag at times, and Mox can be a bit of a whiner, but, well, he was, Dawson and his fucking creek. Overall, I love this movie and still enjoy it very much. It is definitely my favorite movie about high school football, and there's even talks of a Varsity Blues series. I'm not sure if any of the cast would return. We have lost Ron Lester, who played Billy Bob, and Paul Walker, who played Lance. But whatever happens with a TV series, this is a great 90s teen sex comedy sports drama. 2 thumbs up from this guy. Thank you for joining me on this edition of the Late Cassette. And as a reminder, I will be covering The Faculty next week. Don't forget to follow on Twitter and subscribe to the podcast on whatever platform you listen to. And thank you.